Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel Project MIS. My name is Sumit Kumar Amastha, and in today's video we are going to talk about Scrum Master interview preparation. So the overall idea what I had in my mind that if you are going to appear for a Scrum Master interview, so how I can help you to prepare for your interview. So I have used 25 questions and the answer I have given in a point wise. So this will give you the idea so you can understand what all points you can use while answering those questions instead of giving you the ready made answers. So you can take the point from this video and you can frame your own answers using the keywords and and to understand from where to emphasize while answering those questions. So that's how the approach we will be following, and we will be talking question to question and their answer, and wherever necessary input will be there, I will be answering on those parts as well. So let's begin. Question 1: what is Scrum and how does it differ from the Agile methodology? So here the emphasis will be on the Scrum part. So the and this is the one paragraph kind of answer, but I have split it in few points so we can understand where which are the keyword where we should be focusing while answering this question. So Scrum is an agile framework for managing and delivering complex project. So here itself we are differentiating that what is the difference between Scrum and Agile, because Scrum is an agile framework. So Agile is a methodology and Scrum is a framework, and it differs from other agile methodology in its use of fixed length iterations, because in Scrum we have iterations which we refer as sprint, and also we are using a specific role for Scrum, which are Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Development Team. So this is the point which we should be definitely covering while answering this question, and how overall this is delivering value to ensure incremental development and continuous improvement. So incremental development, you are going to talk about increment that should give a trigger to the interviewer, and when you're talking about continuous improvement, you can give a trigger on the retrospective. Through retrospective you can focus on continuous improvement. So again that will bring in your normal explanation that you are also using a word retrospective to mention continuous improvement. So that also will give, like, that comfort to the interviewer that you are familiar with these ceremonies or words. So that's about question number 1. Question number 2: can you explain the roles and responsibilities of a Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Development team in a Scrum framework? So this is in general, like, I have just used the key sentence for the definition of or the explanation of their roles and responsibility, but you have to have some more reading about Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Development team. So what is the key thing which should be covered? The Scrum Master serves as a servant leader. So this word is very very important and it's a very big trigger. Servant leader. So you are saying that Scrum Master should be a servant leader. So you're talking about the leadership style, and what is the leadership style which a Scrum Master should follow? That is a servant leadership style. To facilitate Scrum ceremony and removing impediment. So that is the objective. That covers the key points for Scrum Master. Product owner manages the product backlog and defines priorities. So this point for product owner is the key point, that it says that product owner owns product backlog, and at the same time he has the authority to decide the priority for this product backlog. And then when it comes to development team, so development team is responsible for delivering increments of a potentially shippable product. So they got something in the sprint that has certain set of stories, so they are supposed to develop the story and do the testing, and then they should be giving that set of story as an increment which should be shippable in the sense it should be in a perfect place, perfect state where it can be directly deployed into the production, where the user can start using that application. So this is the point for these three roles and their responsibilities: Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Development Team. Question number 3: how do you handle impediment or blockers in a Scrum team? So this is a situational question, like this is not process based question, situational question. So you are working in a Scrum team, you are getting some impediment, and now you have to deal with it. So how you are going to deal with it? So sequential points are written there. You try to understand and frame your own answer. I address impediment by first identifying them. So by some mean you have to identify that there are impediment, and how you are going to identify there are impediment during daily stand up or other team interactions. So when you are having the daily stand up with the team, the scrum call, daily scrum, either in that call or when you are having some discussion with the team, during that discussion you should be able to pick that impediment. And once you identify those impediment, then you have to work to remove those impediment or to mitigate them. So first thing, you have to identify. Second thing, how we are going to identify, through team interaction or daily scrum. And then once you identify them, then you have to remove or mitigate them. And after that, how you are going to mitigate, either you will be doing something on your own or you will be working with some other people to remove those impediments. So that will be your next set of action. And the overall idea why this whole approach is being followed, to maintain transparency and keep the team informed of progress. So Scrum Master comes to know that there are impediment and he is doing the needful to resolve or mitigate, but at the same time, to maintain the transparency, he has to make sure that everyone from the team is aware about that impediment. First thing, because that might have dependency, and second thing, because in a Scrum framework we ensure to maintain transparency. So it should be clearly visible for everyone that there are some impediment and what is an impediment. So when you are using Jira, so you can flag the issue, and after while flagging you can give the comment. So that will be good enough process to follow when you have to highlight impediment. Now let's move to question number 4: how do you measure the success of a Scrum team or a Scrum project? So now we have a Scrum team and we are identifying the method through which we can measure the success. So success in Scrum is often measured through the team's ability. So definitely team's ability will be translated in the success of Scrum. Then, to deliver a potentially shippable product increment. And what is that ability? The ability is about to deliver a potentially shippable product or increment. Shippable product in the sense, a, a software or an application which is in a state to be deployed in production, which can be used by customer directly without any further amendment. And the team's continuous improvement over time. So these are the two parameters we are saying which will be used to measure the team success. And how you are going to measure? The key performance indicators KPI can include velocity. So velocity is when you work for initial few sprint. So you will be noticing, the first sprint you deliver 20 user point, story point, and second sprint you delivered 25 story point. In third sprint you delivered again 25 story point. So now we have the data for three sprint: first sprint 20 story point, second sprint 25, and third sprint 25. So 25 plus 25 plus 20, so you will take the average of these three, and that average will give you the average velocity of your sprint. So after these three sprint, you can say On an average, your team can deliver these many story point on a sprint basis. So that is one parameter to measure your success. Second, sprint burn down chart. So sprint, any given day, when the sprint is running, and on any given day, starting from day 1 till day 10, you can generate the sprint burn down chart, and this chart will give you that how many total story points are there, how many story points are completed, how many story points are pending. This information will be visible when you see this chart. So this is another measure to observe or to measure the success. And stakeholder satisfaction. So when we are working for a longer duration with one of the team, right? So at a regular frequency, this is a regular practice every corporate they follow. So they circulate a survey with client, and client, they have to, because they are working with the team on a regular basis, so they understand, like, plus and minus everything. So based on their experience, they will be filling the survey, and that survey outcome will also tell that how, where the team stands. So that is another measure. So in this interview question, we are focusing on 3 points which can be used as a measure of success: velocity, sprint burn down chart, and stakeholder satisfaction survey. Question 5: what is the purpose of the sprint review and sprint retrospective meeting? So this is very simple question, right? Because we are talking about two of the sprint scrum ceremonies. So sprint review allows the team to showcase the completed work to stakeholder and gather feedback. So development team has certain set of stories assigned to them in the sprint planning, and during the sprint they are working on that and delivering that. So it will, sprint review will give them the opportunity to showcase their work, and then sprint retrospective is an opportunity for the team where they can review their process, and they can look for, like, the continuous improvement ideas, like, where they can improve the way they are working. So these 2 points are sprint review to showcase team's work, whatever team has done the work, and retrospective talks about the opportunity to reflect on their process, like, how they are processing the entire activity, and where is the chances for improvement. So that's the takeaway for sprint review and sprint retrospective. Question 6: how do you prioritize the product backlog items in a scrum project? See, if you see these questions, so this is a tricky question in the sense, if I am a scrum master, then ideally I don't have the authority to prioritize until I consult product owner or stakeholder. So how you should start answering this question? First thing, it's important to collaborate, because if you are a scrum master and you have to work on prioritization of the product backlog, then first thing you have to collaborate, and you have to collaborate with whom? With product owner and stakeholder, to ensure alignment with project goals, because stakeholder and product owners are deciding the project goal, and they have the authority to decide which one to prioritize at first and which one at later. But being a scrum master, after their authority of product owner and stakeholder, what is your, like, input to this question is that how the prioritization will be done. So you can talk about after that the prioritization. PBI is a product backlog items based on their business value. So what is the value we are going to get from the product backlog item? Based on that value, the prioritization is done. That you can talk about, that what is the basis for prioritization. But who will decide? Product owner and stakeholder. But the prioritization will be done based on their business value, stakeholder feedback, and the team's capacity for delivery. Team's capacity for delivery is also important, which you should definitely talk about in this question. Why it is important? Because, for example, suppose the sprint velocity is 25 for your in past few sprint. So it means in one sprint you are delivering 25 story point. Now in this sprint, which is going to start from, assume, the next Monday, so you, as per your past experience, you will say 25 story point you can deliver. But in the same sprint cycle, suppose there are some 4 5 days leaves are there for one of the team member. So instead of 25 story point, now you can only deliver 20 story point because there are some leave plan for the team. So now the 5 story point are lesser now. So which 5 story point of stories you will take to the next sprint? So again prioritization will come. So we could have planned for 25 story point, but now we are able to plan only for 20 story point. So which 20 story point we have to pick? That is the prioritization. Again, will be based on the input from product owner and stakeholder. But capacity also matters. And then you can also mention about some techniques like Moscow, so must have, should have, could have, won't have. So that is the Moscow. So you are categorizing your product backlog items in different category, and after that you are choosing, okay, this is must have, so this is the first one, this is should have, so second priority, could have, third priority, won't have, if it is not there then also it's fine. So that's how. So this talking about this technique again will give the comfort to the interviewer to take the decision faster. So that's for this particular question. Let's move to the next one. What is the definition of done and why is it crucial in Scrum? So see, definition of done is very important part, and every Scrum Master should definitely be aware about it. And if DoD is not being followed very strictly in any Scrum team, then definitely Scrum Master should do his bit to get that implemented. So definition of done is a checklist of criteria. So it's a checklist which says these many things needs to met when you say an increment is board. So DoD is a checklist of criteria. Checklist of what? That must be met for a product increment to be considered complete. So when you say one sprint is getting over, so this checklist has to be executed, and your increment, the overall delivery value, should meet this criteria. It also ensures a shared understanding. So whether it is a developer, it is a tester, or it is a Scrum Master, or it is a product owner, they have the common understanding that when the increment will be called increment. Because for to call the delivery value as an increment, there are certain points in the checklist, and each point needs to be ticked off. So it's a shared understanding across different people. So it ensures the standardization. And then what is the overall objective of definition of done? It supports the delivery of high quality work, because when we are defining the definition of done and the checklist item for this definition of done, then we ensure that once those checklist items are met, it means that will ensure that the quality is also at par for the delivery. So the certain points of that checklist will be implemented, can be tested for each of the story or task what you are working upon, and certain point of that checklist will be used to validate the whole increment. So there are two things, so for example, you can say in definition of done, the first point says the acceptance criteria are met. So this acceptance criteria point will be validated against each of the stories. But the second point in the definition of done, which is in your checklist, it says that the unit testing for the entire scenarios are completed. uh, Integration testing is completed, regression testing is completed. So that is the thing where you will be performing these, like evaluation, these uh, tests on the whole of increment. But the ultimate idea is that you are making sure that you are delivering the quality increment. Question 8: can you explain the concept of self organizing teams in Scrum? This is a kind of little subjective question, because we know that a Scrum team should be self organized. But what is self organized means? Self organizing teams have the autonomy. So team has, like that autonomy. Independently they can take something to make decision about how they work and how to achieve their sprint goal. So Scrum team has that, independent decision making capacity, where they can take their own decision because they are familiar about the sprint goal. So they should be able to decide what needs to be done to meet that sprint goal. And Scrum Master support, the self organization behavior of the team. And wherever team faces any impediment, Scrum Master help them to remove that obstacle, and also facilitate collaboration among the team member and among the external team members also. So self-organizing team means team has a sprint goal and team has that independent power to take decision to meet the sprint goal. And in this process, Scrum Master help them to remove impediments and also facilitate collaboration. Question 9: how do you handle scope changes or new requirement that emerge during a sprint? See, this is again a practical question, because normally we don't expect such thing if we go by the standard definition of Scrum. But there is a lot of difference in the definition and the real world scenario. So what is the answer? I work with the product owner and stakeholders to evaluate the impact of changes. So first thing, when you see some scope changes or new requirement that emerge during a sprint, so see, the understanding is what? First you have to understand, we are talking about, we have started the sprint, we have got some stories assigned in sprint planning. So I know in this sprint I am going to deliver these many set of stories. But after the sprint starts, there are some scope changes are there. So after the sprint starts, your client is telling you, okay, no, he want the story to be done this way. You have already estimated the story that it will take x number of hours. But now after the change, what is the impact? The first thing Scrum Master has to make sure to evaluate what is the impact of that change. And once the impact is understood, then determine whether they are essential for the sprint goal. So once the impact is understood, then the next part will be to discuss and understand, is it essential to incorporate that scope change in the sprint. If they says yes, then we have to adjust the sprint backlog. And if you adjust the sprint backlog, then accordingly, in the same manner, it will also impact the timeline. Okay, so that part you have to highlight. But if that is understood, that the scope change is not something, which we have to take it now only, so we can consider that for the future sprint, not a problem. But if you have to adjust that change in the current sprint, then your current sprint delivery will be impacted. Or to maintain the same timeline, if the change is requiring more number of hours, then the developers have to spend more number of hours beyond the time which is agreed for the sprint. So it will take some time. Date wise it can be maintained, but on the daily basis whatever number of hours developers are giving, they might have to give some additional hours to incorporate the change. And if that is not done, if that number of extra number of hours we are not giving that time, then in that case it will be increasing the timeline, which is also not suggested as per Scrum. So it's a tricky question. It completely depends what is the call product owner is going to take, and these things has to be followed very transparently, and everyone in the team should aware about it when scope changes comes on your way. Next question, number 10. Describe the Agile Manifesto and its principles. This is very basic, generic, theoretical question. So I have just written down the values here, but you have to read about it. So normally you can any of the point you can take. So the Agile Manifesto is a set of values and principles that guide agile development. So what are the values? It prioritizes individuals and interactions over process and tools. That is the first one. Second, working solutions over comprehensive documentation. Then customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And then responding to change over following a plan. So these are the four values we are talking about. And what is the overall objective? So these principles emphasize adaptability, customer focus, and collaboration. So this is the theoretical question which you must be familiar with, and definitely if you are coming for a Scrum Master interview, then definitely you would have read 12 principles and 4 values. So make yourself familiar with this particular point and just talk about it when it comes during the interview. But this is very basic to talk about. But during the interview sometimes they pick one of these value and ask you to explain, for example, customer collaboration over contract negotiation. So why we are giving priority to customer collaboration and on contract negotiation? So these kind of explanations should be ready when you are appearing in the interview. Okay. Question 11. What is the difference between velocity and capacity in Scrum? So let's read it here first, then I will explain. Velocity is a measure of a team's average work output over several sprints, often used for long-term planning. So as I said earlier in some of the question, that when we spend some time delivering increment over few sprint, so we have the historical data, in first sprint how many story points are delivered, in second sprint how many story points are delivered, in third sprint how many story points are developed. So you can take average of these story point delivered in each of the sprint, so that will give you one average number, and that average number will be your sprint velocity. So it means in general, in every sprint, how many story points your team is able to deliver. That is the velocity. Clear? Now capacity. Capacity, on the other hand, refers to the team's available time and resources for a specific sprint. Capacity may differ sprint to sprint, and how it helps determine how much work can be taken into a sprint based on the team's capacity. See, team's capacity is very simple. How you have to understand that if there are 5 members in the team, so one day one person is working for 8 hours, let's assume. Okay, so 5 members are there, so 8 5s are 40. So in one day those 5 people will spend 40 hours of work. Now if we talk about 1 week, so 40 into 5, 200 hours of work they can deliver. And if we talk about 10 days, then it will be 200 into 2, 400 hours. So that's how 400 hours is the team's capacity for the given sprint. But this is not so straightforward. So that is the total capacity we are taking as of now. Okay, so 5 member, 10 days each, 8 hours per day. So we are reaching to the calculation of 400 hours in 10 days by 5 members. But during the sprint there can be one public holiday. So now you moved from 10 working days to 9 working days. So that is changing your capacity. Okay, now from these other or 5 members, suppose one person is off for 2 days, two persons are off for 1 day each. So like that there are 4 holidays, so again 4 days are gone. So based on the calendar and based on the team's leave plan, your capacity will be changing sprint to sprint. So in at full, 400 hours, if no holiday and no one is taking leave, then 400 hours of work will be done in one sprint. But if someone is taking off and there are public holidays, planned holiday, then in that case the capacity will be reduced. So that is the straightforward thing. Velocity will give you how many story points in general are being delivered on every sprint, but capacity will take and how many hours or how much effort is there from the team side which is available for the sprint. So that's the difference between velocity and capacity. Question number 12: how do you address conflicts within a scrum team? See, again, this is subjective question, and it can be scenario based, and it can be it can differ person to person. How do you address conflict within a scrum team? So in general, I have given my approach, but everyone has a different approach when they have to resolve conflict. So you feel feel free to plan your answer based on your individual approach, but if it is me, then I will follow this approach. So I address conflict by first facilitating open and honest communication among team members. So depending on the type of conflict, that we have to make it open first, because we are working in the agile methodology, Scrum Framework, maintaining transparency. So it has to be open with everyone. There's nothing to hide here. And then I encourage team to share their perspective and listen to others. So they should also listen to others. Most of the time I have seen conflicts are there because there is a lack of communication, and there is some communication gaps are there, and the message is interpreted in a wrong way. So everyone should share their perspective, and also at the same time they should be listening to others. So that is my approach which I always prefer. And if it require, then we may have to go for conflict resolution technique. This conflict resolution technique is also very basic simple approach, what we take on a generic basis, but we don't know that is also called a technique. So sometimes we tend to avoid the things. That is also one technique. Collaboration is also technique. So these are the name of techniques which can be used when you are resolving the conflict. But in general way, we don't even know that the approach what you are taking on a day to day life, that is one technique. So mention these technical terms in your answer, when you are answering these kind of questions, conflict related. that the technique can be used, whether it can be accommodating, it can be avoiding, it can be collaboration. So these technique you can name. So if required, then you can go for these techniques also. And why we are working on this, resolving the conflict. The overall goal will be to resolve the conflict constructively. So in a positive way, we have to figure out the solution so that we can resolve that, and it should not hinder the team's progress. So this all should happen without impacting your team's velocity. Whatever is the velocity, that should be there, it should not be getting impacted. Okay. Additionally, you have to resolve the conflict, and for that you have to do the needful. Question number 13. Can you share an example of a challenging situation you faced as a Scrum Master and how you resolved it? This is one question which I have made it here. Answer I have made it here in my based on my experience. But feel free to use your own example, which you see on in your day to day life. And otherwise, if you have any other example which you can correlate with the Scrum team, you can use those example also. Or else, if you want, you can use this example also. Completely up to you how you decide. But whatever you choose, you make yourself comfortable with it. So one challenging situation I encountered was when a key team member unexpectedly left the project. So it caused a knowledge gap, and then we have to organize the KT session to ensure that we have the proper backup, and then work with the team to redistribute the workload. So then, after KT, you have to redistribute the workload so that this will reinforce the importance of cross training within the team. So see, this part, you may be cross questioned when you say I organized knowledge transfer session. So the question will come: is it a reactive mechanism or is it a proactive mechanism? So when I know that I am losing one candidate, and to be very precise, let's assume that I am talking about a team where Java developers are there, Angular developers are there, database developers are there. So I have only one Angular developer, and assume that one Angular developer is left the team. And after he left the team, and there can be a scenario in corporate, right? There will be some scenario where you will see that from next day those people are not there. If that is a scenario, then how the Angular piece of work is going to get done? So after that, if you start planning the KT, then this is a reactive approach, and it will take some time, and that will impact the sprint goal. So better you have the proper plan, you have the proper backup in advance, take proactive steps, and parallelly, if possible, run the KT sessions in advance itself. You don't have to know who is going to resign or who will not be part of the team. You prepare for worst and take proactive steps, and make sure that you have the backup for each of the skill what is used in the Scrum. So this is one example which you can use and which you can talk about very nicely based on your experience. So these examples, whenever you are getting these questions, you should take a approach to discuss in length, because by this you can you can engage more with different set of scenarios while addressing these questions. What tool or software do you use for managing Scrum projects, and why? Simple, right? So what are the tools we are using? So I have experience with various agile project management tools such as Jira, Trello, DevOps, Confluence. So see these tools, Azure DevOps and Confluence. So when we are using these, you should be familiar with that. When Jira is used, when Trello is used, The choice of tool depends on the team's needs and preference. Jira, for example, provides robust backlog and sprint backlog, while Trello offers simplicity and ease of use for smaller teams. So normally in corporate, in the big corporate, you will not see Trello. Mostly big corporates are using Jira only. But if the team size is huge, the operation is huge, and you have lots of stories, epics, tasks, subtasks. So in those scenarios, Jira is the most preferable one. And if you go for Trello, so if you are in your home also, if you are running a private business, and if you are just maintaining the task, like a Kanban board, what is the task, whether it is started, whether it is done, those kind of tracking can be done very very easily in Trello. And if you have to maintain some documentation, whatever team is working upon, for everything they are maintaining some document, so Confluence can be used for documentation purpose. So need basis you can use different tools. And you should, because when we go for Scrum Master interview, it is expected from us that we are familiar with the subject and we have some hands-on experience with the subject. So when we are having hands-on experience, then definitely these are the expected question. And how we are answering these questions, that also should give that comfort to the interviewer, that yeah, you know about the subject. So make yourself comfortable with these tools a bit, and understand when these tools are used. Question number 15: how do you ensure that the development team stays motivated and committed to to achieving their sprint goals? So see, again, this is behavioral based question, not a process specific. So you can follow different approach, I can follow different approach, and everyone has their own approach to manage the team. In my way, how I am going to maintain it. So I foster motivation by creating an environment. So my first priority is always to make a very healthy environment. So team should feel about working, they should not be feeling like to move away from the team. So team members should have a sense of ownership, trust and recognition. So they should be feeling they are empowered, they are having some ownership, and we are having trust on them, so that empowers them. And I encourage their autonomy and provide clear goals. So this is also a Scrum team value, right? uh, they are having self-organized team, so uh, they are having autonomy to take the decisions, and because they know what is the project goal, so and they have the capacity, they have the autonomy to choose their decision to meet the sprint goal. And I have to work with them, and remove impediment that can hinder their progress. So if they are having any kind of impediment and Scrum Master is not helping them to remove the impediment, and they are taking their own action to remove the impediment, then they will not have that trust on the Scrum Master. And then if Scrum Master is working with them to remove the impediment, then that will make the healthy environment, and that will build some kind of trust between both of them, that yeah, so if I am getting stuck, then Scrum Master is there to help me. So that healthy environment culture should be there. And regular feedback and acknowledgement of their achievement. So if achievement is there, if someone is achieving something, someone is doing extraordinary, someone is taking some unexpected step to help others, those things should be rewarded, because these rewards keeps the team motivated, and also at the same time it keeps them lively, to work in a very healthy way for the team contribution. So these are some of the point I have given. You can pick some point from here, or you can draft your own points, or you can take completely different set of example itself. But make yourself ready with this scenario, because this is very commonly asked question in the Scrum Master interview. Question 16: can you explain the concept of servant leadership? in the context of a Scrum Master's role? So this question also, very commonly I have seen, people are asking this question. So this is a very good opportunity for you to talk about. By while answering this question, you can plan your answer and you can take the decision in your own direction. So when you say this question, servant leadership. So servant leadership is it's a type of leadership approach, leadership style. So that you can first you should be talking about the servant leadership is what? It's a leadership style. It means Scrum Master primary focus is on serving and enabling the team to perform at its best. So he should be able to serve and enable the team to perform at its best. It means he is motivating team to do their best, because ultimately the work has to be done by the team, but he is enabling to wherever they are getting stuck, wherever they need help. Sometimes they need collaboration from the external team. When I say, it means outside the Scrum team but within the organization. So those collaborations, those things, you should be taking lead step to help them to get their things done. This involves removing impediment, coaching, facilitating, and providing support. Removing impediment, we have discussed quite a few times. Coaching, if if you think that they are not adhering the values of Scrum, they are getting deviated, then you have to coach them. You have to facilitate ceremonies. You have to facilitate all the calls other than Scrum ceremonies, and you have to provide support wherever necessary. So all these support features, by which you are leading the team by supporting the team, is called servant leadership, and which all leads towards the self-organizing team. So that's servant leadership. So this is very important point, and please prepare this question very very nicely, because the chances are always very high for this question. Question number 17. How do you handle situation when a team member consistently fails to meet their commitment or demonstrates a lack of collaboration? So again, this is individual approach based question, and approach may differ person to person. So if I am handling this situation, then how I will go about it? I would address this situation by having a private conversation. First thing, the moment you see someone is having issue, we should take him and have a separate discussion to understand the problem, challenges, why that is happening. So that will that will help you to understand what is the underlying issue. Sometimes it can be personal issue, sometimes it can be some kind of conflict, whatever it is, but you will understand the issue, and we have to offer support. We have to coach them, and if it required to provide some kind of additional training, whether that can be technical or non-technical, those things we have to identify, and we have to provide that when we are having that situation. And if the issue persists, I would involve the product owner and development team to find a solution collectively. If the issue still the issue is not getting rectified, then you involve product owner and the development team also, to get the peer review, or suggestions as for solution. But what is important here, so suppose one of the team member is approaching Scrum Master, or Scrum Master is identifying that someone is not delivering at his best or at her best, and that is impacting team's delivery. And then in that situation, the moment Scrum Master identifies and he start taking action to have a private conversation with the associate. So I personally think that Scrum Master should definitely raise that point also to all the stakeholders. So stakeholders are also involved about not involved, but they are aware about the situation, because we are dealing with something which is going to impact the sprint review or the sprint increment. And if the the issue is getting sorted, it's very good for the whole scrum team. But if the issue is not getting sorted, it becomes worse, and it becomes so challenging even after that. So that time you will not be able to meet the sprint goal, and your product owner and the stakeholders will get surprised when they come to know that after 3 4 days that this is the issue which is going on since last 3 4 days, but you came to know now only. So better to keep them informed from the day one when you identify the issue, so there is no surprise. It's always open and transparent for them also. So that will be my approach. You can look over on this one. You can customize it per your individual approach, or how you take steps in this kind of situation. And you can prepare for this question as well. Question number 18: what do you consider the most important skills and qualities of a successful scrum master? So we have, discussed this earlier also, that the most important skills and qualities include strong communication, which is normal, scrum master skill: strong communication, adaptability, empathy, and problem solving facilitation. These are very very self explanatory words, so I'm not going into deeper on this point. And at the same time, he should have a deep understanding of scrum principle. So he should understand the scrum principle values, and the ceremonies and the roles, responsibilities, everything. He should have a good understanding. Then only, he can manage the scrum team. And scrum master should also be a servant leader. Servant leader means he is enabling the team to do the things. And for that, he's helping them, he's working with them, he's collaborating with them. But instead of, taking his name, he is enabling them, he is empowering them to do the things. So that is what servant leader. And at the same time, scrum master should be a motivator and an advocate for continuous improvement. So he should be, motivator. He should make sure that, he keep motivating the team to maintain the team morale, and always work towards continuous improvement. And that is through, again, one scrum ceremony, which is sprint retrospective. So that's about this question. Question 19: how do you promote continuous improvement in a scrum team? So the first keyword which you should be talking about while answering this question is the sprint retrospective. So I promote continuous improvement by conducting regular retrospective, where the team reflect on their process and identify areas for enhancement. So we are when the sprint gets over, we organize the sprint retrospective. And when the sprint retrospective happens, everyone from the team, they give their input, that what all things, went very well, and what all things, didn't go well. And based on that, whatever didn't go well, will be, agreeing on some action point which the team should work upon to improve on those particular point which didn't go well this time. So that's what the approach being followed for a sprint retrospective, and that is how you will maintain the continuous improvement. So today I feel that, I'm lagging on this particular piece, then that is the action point for me. I will take that as an action point, I will work on that action point, and I hope that, in the next sprint, that that issue should not be there. So that is how we continuously improve. And the best practices sharing and learning across the organization. So scrum master should also be, very open on these. For example, when they come to know that there are some best practices being followed by other team, and his scrum team is not following that, So he can work on the feasibility, but at the same time he has to make sure that he is organizing such best practices sharing sessions, so the overall quality can be improved. So that's what. So these are few things through which a Scrum Master can foster the culture of continuous improvement. Question number 20: what is the role of metrics and data analysis in Scrum, and can you provide example of valuable Scrum metrics? So metrics in Scrum can provide insight. So not only in Scrum, anywhere if you have the metrics, it gives some insight about something. And about something, when I say about something, it can be what? It can be team performance and help identify areas for improvement. So based on this, you can identify how team is performing, and based on that you can figure out what can be the area for improvement in the upcoming time. And now let's, if you have to talk about the valuable Scrum metrics, so what all those metrics can be? So those can be velocity, burn down and burn up chart, then cycle time, lead time, and customer satisfaction metrics. So these are straightforward metrics which can be used for the analysis and for the understanding of the performance of the Scrum team. So when we have the metrics, so what is the culture it brings? This brings the culture of data driven decision making. So we are not talking in air and just based on some observation or someone is saying something, based on that we are taking the decision. If you are maintaining the data, then you can make the decisions based on the data. So data driven decisions. So that's how this Scrum metrics can be used. Question number 21: can you explain the difference between a product backlog and a sprint backlog? This is very straightforward question. I think it's very clear, very easy to talk about. The product backlog is a prioritized list of all the features, user stories, and improvements that may be worked on in the future. Whereas the sprint backlog is a subset of the product backlog, containing the items that the team commits to completing in the given sprint. So, what all work I have to do during the development of the product? So, I make a list starting from point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever is the number of count. So, that is your product backlog, because that has all the list of stories which will be worked upon to complete the product. So that is the product backlog. But if you are talking about one particular sprint, so what set of user story from the product backlog can be delivered in the given sprint, that list of story will be called sprint backlog. So sprint backlog is a subset of the product backlog. There can be several sprint backlog in the product backlog. So that's product backlog and sprint backlog. Next question, question number 22: what do you think are the common challenges faced by Scrum Masters in large organization, and how would you address them? See, when you are working as a Scrum Master, right, so there will be several challenges which you will be seeing on a day to day basis, due to the size of the organization or the process or methodology being followed in such large organization. So common challenges, what all can be the common challenges: resistance to change, lack of alignment between teams, and a bureaucratic process. So these are the challenges. Resistance to change means some changes coming to the team, and and it's it's not easy to go through with those changes. Lack of alignment between teams, you're working with different teams and you all are not aligned, because teams are following agile, but actually the leadership is still not habituated to the agile, so they are still be though they are following agile, but their expectation for the governance is based on the different project management style rather than agile. So that there also, alignment comes into the picture. And then a bureaucratic process, so there's some process which is set, that might not be suitable in the agile and the scrum, but that process there, so that is a challenge. To address these challenges, how, scrum master can take necessary step. So coaching leadership, it's not easy, but you have to coach the leadership team. But at the same time, someone from the leadership should have that understanding that someone can coach them. So if that understanding is there, and the senior leadership is willing to take the training, then definitely you should pass that training to them, understanding, and make that roles and responsibility point very very clearly, so that they have their responsibilities very very clearly understood. And creating communities of practice, so this is additional step. It is not prescribed by scrum which you have to do it, but this is something which is good to do. If you can create the communities of practice, so either from your team or from other team also can be part of that community and can help each other. And emphasizing the agile mindset. So agile agile, we all know that that this is a mindset. So you have to, make sure that agile mindset is being implemented. Everyone understand that what is agile mindset, and they are slowly, if not at once, but slowly they are moving towards following the agile. So that's the cultural change, with scrum master is expected to run, when these kind of large organizations are having underlying issues. Question number 23: what are the artifacts of the scrum framework? So artifacts, so we know about, the primarily there are three artifacts. Product backlog, we know, we discussed the all the list of user story and task, subtask, which will be developed throughout to deliver the software. Those are called product backlog. Sprint backlog is a subset of product backlog. So whatever set of stories from product backlog are being worked upon in the given sprint, those will be called sprint backlog. So sprint backlog, as I said, it's a subset of product backlog. Then increment. The increment is the sum of all the product backlog items completed during a sprint, as well as the increment of all previous sprint. It must be potentially shippable state, which means it is of high quality and ready for release. So what is increment? First sprint gets over. So in first sprint you have got some stories from product backlog, so that is already released and customers are using, so that will become your uh, increment. Then the second sprint, similar scenario, second set of stories are being delivered to customer. So now your increment is what? The second sprint stories plus the all the past stories, past sprint stories. So that will create the increment for you. So these are the three artifacts in a Scrum framework: product backlog, sprint backlog, and increment. Question number 24: what are various estimation techniques used in Scrum framework? You should be knowing this point very very clearly, and there can be, longer questions also in this particular point. So to answer this question, you need to understand what is the story point, what is planning poker, what is t-shirt sizing, and ideal days. So let me tell in very very brief. Okay, you can read it, you can read further also in Google and all. But let me brief you on this. The estimation technique you're talking about. Estimation technique means we have a story and we are trying to understand how easy or complex that story is, or in other words, we are trying to find out how much time it takes for the system to take that. So story point, so a story point is is maintained in a Fibonacci sequence. So you have set of stories, you take one story and give one number to them, do one number to that particular story. It can be 3 or 5. Let's assume it is 3. Now when you go for the next second user story, now you compare the second story from the first one. So if the complexity is same and the first story has given story point 3, the second story also will be given 3. But if second story is more complex, then from 3 you will change to 5. But if the second story is less complex, then 3 you will be changed to 2. So the first will remain 3 and the second will change to 2. I'm sorry. So that's the story point. Then the planning poker is nothing but it's like a game only. So it used to be done offline. So offline may how it used to work, you'll be having different card. So if there are 5 developer and we are talking about one user story, so we will first discuss about the user story, and the 5 empty card will be given to all 5 people from the team, and based on their understanding they will be writing what should be the story point for that particular user story. So someone says 2, someone says 1, 3, something like that. So when writes everyone write and submit their card, then at once all the card will be opened and see that how is the number given. If from the number, if the from is from the card, if we are able to derive on the majority one, if so many people have uh, like you know given the estimate as a 3. Suppose out of 5, 3 people have given 3, and the other 2 people are also after the discussion they also agree on the 3, then the story will be taken as 3. So that is the idea for planning poker. It is also done online way through Jira. So Jira, in planning poker, you will say what all stories you are going to estimate using poker, and whoever names you will mention in the planning poker, they will be at once they will be seeing the input place where they can choose what should be the estimate for them story point. And then when everyone submit, then you can see at once that what is that they have all have submitted, and based on that you can choose the most suitable story point. T-shirt sizing is is a very high level estimate. So we know that the t-shirt is of different size, small, medium, and large. So based on the same approach, based on the complexity, you will be assigning these ticket t-shirt sizing to each of the story. If the story is very big, you mention large. If it is lesser or half or complex, then make it medium, or same way small. So it depends that how what is the complexity of the story, and based on the complexity you are deciding the t-shirt sizing estimation. Then ideal days, I believe this is most commonly used in the corporate. I have seen. So when I have a story and I see, I represent that that by number of days that story will be used. So if one story is there, and if I say it needs 3 days of time to complete, then the story point will read as 3. So it means in 3 days that story will be done. And who will be doing the story, that is based on the assignment, whoever the story is assigned to. So that is ideal days. And this ideal days, this gives this gives more clarity, because we are talking about some standard number which gives more clarity. So if I have 5 story, and the combination of 3 plus 3 plus 2, some whatever is the individual, like ideal number of days for the story. But if the total count says, 25, let's assume story 1 3, story 2 3, story 3 10, for example. So like that, you have got 25 days. So it means you need 25 man days to complete the task. Now that one person can work for 25 days, or 5% can work for 5 days, something like that, whatever it is. But so ideal days is something which is very easy and good way to represent the estimate. So this all, in brief about the estimation technique. Now let's go to the next question. What what are the possible risks and challenges in Scrum framework? You see, scope creep is very easy. When you have product backlog and in sprint planning, you identify a certain set of story for a sprint, and you start the sprint work, and the sprint development starts. But during the sprint development, uh, product owner or a stakeholder, they come to you and say that this changes needs to be done, and you have already started working on that. So either you have to undone your work, or you have to redo, or you have to take some extra step and amend the code. So how will be the impact? So that is one challenges which normally we see in the team. And the scope creep is very very common and very disturbing for the development team. Team inexperience. A lack of experience with Scrum or Agile practices can hinder the team's ability to adopt the framework effectively. If team is not familiar with these uh, knowledge area, then that will definitely cause the impact on delivery. Resistance to change. Organizational resistance to Agile and Scrum practices can hinder adoption and the ability to fully embrace the principle of the framework. So here, what is that we have to understand? Organizational resistance to Agile and Scrum practices. So we are following Agile and Scrum, but organization is not habituated to follow that, and you will be facing some resistance because your I mentioned earlier also, right, that because our senior management is not habituated to govern the project by following Agile and Scrum. So there is difference, like they ask for something which is not being followed in Agile Scrum. So, and at the end of the day, you come to know, okay, that they are asking that information because that is being followed for waterfall. So now, there is a disconnect, and it will create issues for you, challenges for you, where you have to go justify, but you cannot justify always. So now, what is the next set of risk and challenges? Quality and technical debt. Neglecting quality practices or accumulating technical debt can lead to long-term problem and hinder a team's ability to deliver a high-value increment. You see, quality cannot be neglected. The quality has to be there. But what is technical debt? Technical debt, when we have a better way of doing the things, but instead of following the better way of doing the thing, we follow a shortcut approach. So while doing by following the shortcut approach, that after certain amount of time, you have to change the way you have done for now, and you will be working additionally to work with the better approach. So that is what is technical debt. So I know that there is a better way. I know that that I have a better way to go somewhere. Sorry, I have a better way to do something, but instead of following the better way, I am following the shortcut way, and by doing that, I am adding the technical debt. It means after a certain amount of time, when the things will open up, or you only will ask the team to change the code, and follow the better approach, and that will be technical debt. It will be eating up extra time also, and it will be eating up extra money also. Then a scaling challenge, for a small team, Scrum Agile is fine, but for a larger team, when we are going for scaling, then it becomes little challenging, because the principles, the values are designed in a way, they're you have to plan it very well, otherwise you will be struggling when the team size becomes bigger. Then the last risk and challenge I have mentioned about the budget. So budget, it may exceed if team's capacity is not utilized. So if team has the capacity to do certain tasks, but you don't have the proper backlog ready, refinement is not done, you have some dependency because of which team is not working, team is just waiting for something to get resolved. So in those scenario, it will also increase your budget, and budget cost will increase. So these are the possible set of risk and challenges which you may see in the Scrum framework. So please go through and please read through it and make yourself familiar, so that whenever these questions are coming on your way, you are answering like a pro. So now, additionally, one more point which I wanted to mention now is that sometimes the questions are being asked in a way that one word answer will be good enough to answer straightforward way. To always try to avoid those scenario, where you're just giving one or two word and stopping to answer or add further into it. So in that scenario, what will happen, that he will be thinking you'll be explaining something more, but you're not speaking, and then with some confusion he will say okay, and then he will ask the next question. So whatever is the scenario, you should be explaining that particular point by adding keyword, correlating that with others, correlate that with values, and that's how you should be answering. And in between you identify something which we can mention as a tag. So that's how it should be there for uh, while interviewing, while answering the questions for interview. Apart from this also, there can be several different combination of questions. So if you are familiar with the Agile and Scrum concepts, ceremonies, artifacts, values, then you should be able to answer any kind of questions. Whatever exceptional question I could think of and I could search for, I have added that in the explanation here. So just go through these questions, also go for additional readings, and prepare very very well. Now some additional point also I would like to share with you all, like the pre-interview. So before you go for interview, there are certain point: research, create your notes. So you do some research on the topic, on Scrum, and also on the company for which you are going for interview, and what is the role for which you have applied, and for what is the role for which you are appearing for interview, what is the job description given for that particular interview. So read through it, research something on that, make your notes, because uh, your own notes will be most convenient reference material for you to go, because that is written by you. So research and create your notes. Explore the app you will use for interview. So this is basic only. Like suppose for example you have received the invite and you have to join that interview call with Microsoft Teams. So if you are not familiar with Microsoft Teams, then before joining the call, just do the setup, log into the application, so that you are familiar, you are not struggling at the last moment to join the call, or setup, or voice is not coming, or some kind of technical issues. So better to log in advance and fix those stuff. Make sure your audio and videos are working, because most of the time these days, interviews are happening online way. So you please make sure, without even being asked for video interview, you make yourself appear with video on, and make sure that the connections are proper for video and audio. That will be ideal approach, and that gives impression to the interviewer. Practice meditation or and calming techniques. Normally, this is the suggested approach, and not only before going for interview. Anything what you do or not do, that's the meditation is always good, because it helps to enhance your thinking capacity. It keeps you calm, it keeps you focus on one particular thing. So this is always best practices. If you can follow, very good. If you are not following, you cannot follow, then there's no push on it, but it's always suggested. So these are some pre-interview preparations which you should be going through with. Then for the same interview, there are some key point which I would like to tell you, which you should be when you are talking to the interviewer, you're establishing connection with him or her. So you, the certain suggestions, be punctual. So avoid a situation where interviewer has joined the call, but you are still struggling to join, and because of some reason, you're joining 1 or 2 minutes late. That should be avoided, because if we cannot be so serious to join the interview call being punctual, then definitely the chances to join the daily routine call will be little lesser only. So we should be punctual on joining interview call. Be polite. You greet your interviewer professionally, amicably, and address them properly, talk to them politely, use words which should sound like a polite approach while talking to them. And be prepared. The questions are not the issue. Questions can be easy, questions can be tough, but you have to prepare yourself very well, so that when any type of questions which comes on your way, you are able to answer. In worst case scenario, if you are not able to answer any of the question, you just admit it instead of answering the wrong stuff. And be positive. Always think positive, be very strong, and answer with full confidence. So these are some tips from my side, which I believe you should be aware of, which you should be following whenever you are attending the interview. I hope this video is helpful for you people to make some understanding about different kind of interview questions, and how we can prepare for them, and how we can ensure that the proper keywords and the terminologies are triggered when it should be. So overall idea is to help you people. I hope this should help you people. And if you have any additional questions which you want to ask me, if you have any comment which you want to make, please feel free to put in the comments of the channel. And also I request you all to subscribe to the channel and share with your friends, so that it can reach to the maximum number of people. So I have given my contact details here, so please contact me if you have any question, if you want to prepare for Scrum Master certification. So my phone contact, YouTube channel contact, Instagram and Facebook page details are also given here, so you can approach me by using any of these means. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe and share among your friends, and all the very best for your interview. Thank you so much.